This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Pawan,
Yes, sir.
start cheyna class.
Start చేసాను సార్.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today is a psychiatric class. I'll deal with the attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and I'm Dr. Prashant. It is a neuropsychiatric condition affecting preschool children, adolescents, and adults, characterized by the inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Previously, it is called as a brain damage behavior syndrome, and later on, it is changed into like with many names like minimal brain damage, minimal brain dysfunction, and at the end, it is called as attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And in the most recent diagnostic classification of manual, which is fifth one, it is named with their subtypes, which includes inattentive or hyperactive impulsive. Coming to the epidemiology, it occurs in 7 to 8% of the children and 5% in adolescents and 2.5% in adults. Coming to the sex ratio, it is most common in the boys with the ratio of 2 to 9%, 2 to 9 is to 1, which comes to the clinic, and community cases which doesn't come to the clinic, ratio is around 2 to 3 is to 1. Gender differences in symptoms like boys, they they present with physical aggression and acting out symptoms, and girls, they present with cognitive and language deficits and inattention. Symptoms often present by the age of 3 years, but usually diagnosed in the kindergarten age. Coming to the etiology, for every disease, genetic factors play a major role. In these ADHD, it is most common in the people with the monozygotic twins rather than the dizygotic twins. And family studies states that 2 to 8 times more in children with parents or siblings having ADHD than in the general population. First degree relatives have high risk of ADHD, disruptive behavior disorders, anxiety, depression, learning disorders, and academic difficulties. So if there is a family history and if you have a doubt that child is having ADHD or not, you can go with diagnosing ADHD because family history itself supports the diagnosis. Neurochemical factors in ADHD, dopamine and norepinephrine play a major role. Norepinephrine moderate release of NE stimulates only alpha 2 adrenergic postsynaptic receptors, which help in improving prefrontal cortex functioning. High release of norepinephrine stimulates alpha 1 and beta 1, also impairing working memory. Normal firing at baseline is slow and tonic. Dopamine, moderate release stimulates D3 and few D1 receptors, improving the prefrontal cortex functioning. High release stimulates D2 and D3, worsening the functioning. The normal release of dopamine should be tonic and low level basic, which becomes uncontrollable due to drug use, resulting in the abuse. So, totally dopamine and norepinephrine dysregulation leads to ADHD. So, these chemicals, neurochemicals, should be released in a balanced way. If there is deficient signaling, decreased neurotransmitting at the synapse, decreased stimulation of postsynaptic receptors, and decreased executive functioning. If there is excessive signaling in adolescents or in adults, increased release of neurotransmitters, excessive phasic firing, increased stimulation of receptors, which leads to abuse, anxiety, impulsivity, and inattention. So at the end, finally, too high or too low stimulation of dopamine or norepinephrine causes inefficient information processing. So it shouldn't be too high or it shouldn't be too low. It should be in a balanced way. Okay. Moderate stimulation of alpha 2A by norepinephrine and D1 receptors by dopamine receptors is required. This is the normal pathway. If I am incoming information, that is, if I am teaching a class, this is the information. It should be processed. Okay. If norepinephrine stimulates alpha 2A adrenergic receptors, cyclic AMP, that is second messenger, releases and cation channel opens, which stops the signaling from going off. This is the first picture, shows the theory which I told you right now. And decreased noise, that is dopamine stimulates D1 receptors and second messengers, activates the second messengers and cation channel, closes the cation channel. This is the second picture. So norepinephrine, when norepinephrine acts on alpha 2 adrenergic receptors, it won't allow the signal to go out. So information strengthen the signal. So low stimulation of dopamine and norepinephrine, it increases the noise and decreases the signal, which leads to unguided attention, which leads to inattention and hyperactivity. High stimulation of dopamine and norepinephrine decreases the noise and increases the signal, which leads to jumbled signals, misdirection of attention and inattention and hyperactivity. In EEG, electroencephalogram, increased teeth activity in the frontal regions in the children is shown, and increased beta in young along with the mood lability and temper tantrums is seen. Coming to the neuroanatomical aspects, superior temporal cortex shows focusing attention. When functional MRIs are seen, when we are focusing on attention, superior temporal cortex are involved. At the same time, executive, when we are doing executive functioning, parietal and corpus striatal parts of brain are involved. And when we have to shift the attention from one part to another part, prefrontal cortex is involved. And we have to listen carefully for a long time, sustained attention, that is sustained attention. Reticular nuclei in the brainstem is involved. During the neuroimaging, decreased activity or volume of the prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate gyrus, globus pallidus, caudate, thalamus, and cerebellum is seen. In adolescent females with ADHD, decreased glucose metabolism is also seen. Frontal lobes in ADHD children, they do not adequately inhibit lower brain structures disinhibition, which leads to disinhibition. These are the parts which involve with a specific function, that is the selective attention, which is at the dorsal anterior cingulate gyrus, and sustained attention and problem solving is at dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and hyperactive symptoms is related to the prefrontal motor cortex, and impulsive symptoms which is related to the orbitofrontal cortex. Developmental and environmental factors. Higher rates of ADHD is seen in premature births, maternal infections during pregnancy, perinatal insult to brain in early infancy due to infection or inflammation, and a rare phenomena, that is September births. Children who are born in September are more prone to ADHD. Clear studies to Sorry for interruption. Coming to the developmental and environmental factors, as I stated, higher rates of ADHD seen in premature births, maternal infections during pregnancy, perinatal insult to brain in early infancy due to infections like torch infections or inflammation, and September births. Psychosocial factors, these are which include chronic abuse in the children, maltreatment or neglect, which may lead to ADHD. Like if the child is prone to ADHD, these factors like chronic abuse, maltreatment and neglect may trigger the ADHD. This is the age-wise onset of symptoms. Coming to the first year, a normal baby has working memory at 1 year, and preschool little able to sustain attention and task, easily distracted by the irrelevant stimuli. But at the age of 6 or after 5, these kids go to the school and they need more attention. They have to sit in the class for a longer duration. There the problem arises. Here, ability to sustain attention on one task but not preserve it. Recognition, memory, formation of abstract concepts. At this age of point, ADHD symptoms will come out of the families and they come to the clinician with the symptoms of like they are not able to sit in the class for a longer duration. They are not able to complete the task given by the class teacher. They are easily losing the things like their things like books and everything, and they are not able to do the task like homework and all. After the age of 10, that is nearly 15, executive functioning emerges. So in preschool children, usually parents pamper the kids. So inattention is although present at the age of preschool, it won't be visible by the parents. Only hyperactivity and impulsivity is seen at the preschool age because they pamper the child and they neglect or they won't explain the kid about the hyperactivity and impulsivity. So they are present at the early age. As the age goes on, the impulsivity and hyperactivity decreases because of the social needs, and when they go to the school because of the fear of punishment and all. But the inattention goes on increases and it persists during the later life. These are the clinical features, which includes hyperactivity, that is fidgeting, leaving one seat, running, climbing, constantly on the go, or trouble playing quietly. They can't play quietly and they do noise at all, like anything. And coming to the impulsivity, they talk excessively, blurting things out, not waiting for the one turns during the game, or interrupting the other games, etc. Selective inattention, making careless mistakes, not listening to the classes, losing things, as I said, like books and everything, and forgetting the things, and easily distracted by the outer sounds or anything. And coming to sustained inattention, difficulty in finishing tasks, disorganization, trouble in problem solving. Clinical features are memory and thinking deficits, specific learning disabilities like writing, writing, calculations, and language, and speech and hearing deficits. Associated features are perceptual impairments, emotional lability, developmental coordination difficulties. Along with it, during assessment, along with the child and parent, school history and teachers report is critical in evaluation because child will be at the school for a duration of 6 hours, and the more and at the time attention and sustained attention are required. Access social relationships with siblings, peers, adults, and engagement in free and structured activities. Mental status examination shows distractibility, perseveration, depressed mood if the child is aware of his impairment. Neurological examination, which includes soft signs, that is sensory impairments, poor motor coordination, difficulty in copying figures, difficulty in right and left discrimination, ambidexterity and synkinesis, mirror movements, If absence is present, like that is the absence seizures, EEG should be reload to temporal lobe seizures as they resemble ADHD in behavioral disturbances. This is the DSM-5 criteria. A persistent inattention and or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with functioning. It is characterized by the 6 or more of the following for at least 6 months of duration. Coming to the inattention in the criteria, he or she often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork or work or other activities. Often has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow through instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace, not due to oppositional behavior or failure to understand the instructions. Often has difficulty organizing the tasks and activities. Often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort, such as schoolwork or homework. Often loses things necessary for the tasks or activities. That is example for toys, school assignments, pencils, books, or tools. Is often easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. Is often forgetful in daily activities. Coming to the hyperactivity subgroup, he or she often fidgets with hands or feet or swims in a seat. Often leaves seat in classroom or in other situation in which remaining seated is expected. Often runs about or climbs excessively in situations in which it is inappropriate, like in the schools or in religious places. In adolescents or adults, it is maybe limited to subjective feelings of restlessness. Like the adolescent may feel that restless, he or she can't sit at a place for a long time. Often has difficulty playing or engaging in leisure activities quietly. Is often on the go or often acts as if driven by a motor. Often talks excessively. And in the hyperactivity impulsivity, often blurts out answers because before questions have been completed. Often has difficulty waiting for his or her turn. Often interrupts or intrudes on others, butts into conversations or other games. Some are hyperactivity, impulsive, or inattention symptoms that caused impairment were present before the age of 12 years. Some impairment from the symptoms is present in 2 or more settings, that is, example at school or work or at home. There must be clear evidence of clinically significant impairment in social, academic, or occupational functioning because of this hyperactivity or inattention. The symptoms do not occur exclusively during the course of pervasive developmental disorders or schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders and are not better accounted for any other mental disorder. Example, mood disorder, anxiety disorder, dissociative disorder, or a personality disorder. Coming to the specifiers of ADHD, it includes combined, that is, inattentive or hyperactive impulsive, or predominantly inattentive, or predominantly hyperactive and impulsive. Any of these 3 can occur. And changes of DSM-5 from the DSM-4, previously symptoms should be present by the age of 7 years, but now it is changed to 12 years. Subtypes are replaced by specifiers, permitting comorbid ADHD and autism spectrum diagnosis. And for to diagnose adolescents and adults, we need just 5 symptoms rather than 6 symptoms. Coming to the investigations are mainly done to rule out any organic causes. For example, EEG to rule out any seizure abnormality, or blood investigations to rule out thyroid function tests or any chemical biochemical abnormalities. The scales used in the ADHD are child behavior checklist. This is given to parents and teachers, and Conners parent rating scale, Conners teachers rating scale, and comprehensive teachers rating scale. These scales are to be performed after treating to see the improvement after the treatment. Coming to the differential diagnosis, before diagnosing ADHD, we have to keep in mind these other factors also, other diagnoses like temperamental traits. This is a normal phenomena which occurs in a 3-year-old child, and anxiety due to any cause at the school or preschool, And depressive disorders, normally in adults, depressive disorders manifest with a low mood and decreased sleep and low energy. But in children, depressive disorder might manifest in a different way, like in a opposite way, like being more active, irritable. So we have to include depressive disorder in order to diagnose the ADHD. And mania, oppositional deficient disorder, and conduct disorder. Coming to the treatment part, this includes pharmacotherapy, psychotherapy, and combined approach. We generally prefer combined approach because of the good outcome. Coming to the pharmacotherapy, two type of pharmacotherapy we can use. These are CNS stimulants and non-stimulants. Among CNS stimulants, we use methylphenidate and amphetamine, and the non-stimulants, these are atomoxetine, clonidine, guanfacine, and in a rare phenomenon like we use antidepressants and modafinil. NICE guidelines states that drug treatment should only be initiated by specialist and only after comprehensive assessment of mental and physical health and social influences. For cases with moderate degrees of severity, psychological interventions are recommended as initial therapy, with medication subsequently if still required. For severe cases, that is those with pervasive impairment from their ADHD, medication will usually be the first line of treatment rather than the psychological interventions. Methylphenidate and dexamphetamine and atomoxetine are recommended within their licensed indications. Normally, methylphenidate is a usually first choice of medication, but decision should be include consideration of comorbid conditions, like if the child is having tics or Tourette syndrome or epilepsy, we shouldn't use methylphenidate because it increases the norepinephrine and dopamine, which worsens the symptoms of tics and Tourette syndrome. In the same way, tolerability and adverse effects we should consider. Convenience of dosing, potential for a diversion, patient-parent preference, these factors should be considered. If using methylphenidate, consider modified release preparations or multiple doses of methylphenidate. Where more than one agent is considered suitable, the product with the lowest cost should be prescribed, because patients have to use this medication even in the adolescence. Monitoring should include measurement of height and weight with entry of growth charts and recording of blood pressure and heart rate. As methylphenidate decreases the growth hormone, we have to measure this height and weight frequently at a regular intervals in order to check if there is any growth suppression. If there is a growth suppression, we can use methylphenidate, we can give drug holidays, like we will give the methylphenidate when the child needs, that is when the child is going to school, child needs he or she have to be in a disciplined manner in school, and he needs attention, so we prescribe methylphenidate during the school days, and we can give drug holidays like during the holidays. At that time, sustained attention is not needed. Okay, we can give drug holidays. Route of administration of methylphenidate is oral. These are the types like immediate, extended, or controlled release tablet, solution, or transdermal patches, whichever. Dose we 2 mg per kg per day in children more than 6 years. Generally, we start with the 5 mg and gradually we increase up to 10 mg. In a rare cases, we go up to 60 mg. Mechanism of action of methylphenidate, as I said, it increases the norepinephrine and dopamine by blocking the transporter, stopping reuptake by binding to the norepinephrine transporter and dopamine transporter allosterically at different sites from the monoamines. Amphetamine, it also blocks both transporters, but like monoamines only. Coming to the atomoxetine, these are non-stimulants, selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. Dosage is 0.5 to 1.2 mg per kg per day in children up to 70 kgs. Adult dosage is like 40 to 100 mg per day. Mechanism of action: it inhibits norepinephrine transport and increases the norepinephrine and dopamine in prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex plays a major role in working memory, executive functions, and sustained attention. So we have to balance the norepinephrine and dopamine in the prefrontal or frontal lobes. Dopamine transporters are very few in prefrontal cortex. So dopamine is also reuptake by norepinephrine transport. But norepinephrine transporters are very few in nucleus accumbens. Nucleus accumbens plays a major role as a reward system. Okay, whenever we eat the food we like, or whenever people take drugs, or whenever people go for racing, gambling, and all, this part on the brain activates. So if we use methylphenidate and dopamine increases, dopamine reuptake is blocked, dopamine increases the synapse. So nucleus accumbens activates during the methylphenidate. So methylphenidate has abuse potential, but atomoxetine doesn't have these abuse potential because norepinephrine transporters are very few in nucleus accumbens. Guanfacine and clonidine are alpha-2 adrenergic agonists. Psychological interventions: this is psychoeducation for the child and psychoeducation for the parents, and combined and academic organization skills remediation, parent training, behavioral modification in class, home, and CBT, that is cognitive behavior therapy, social skills training. These are particularly useful for adolescents and adults. These two, like CBT and social skills training, are not useful for the child. Behavior therapy for parents and children. Behavior therapy for parents includes, many parents think that this is not a neuropsychiatric disorder. They think that child is behaving violently, and he or she is not at all performing well in the schools. They tend to punish the child in their own style. In order to avoid these punishments, behavior therapy should be inculcated in the treatment along with the pharmacotherapy. And the other one is group therapy. Order of treatment in ADHD with comorbidities: if the child is having other comorbidities, or adolescent is having other comorbidities, which includes substance abuse, mood disorder, anxiety, first substance abuse should be addressed, later mood disorder, and later anxiety, later ADHD, and later nicotine dependence. Treatment challenges: as I said earlier, when we have to give methylphenidate, we have to keep in mind that, or we have to rule out whether the child is having tics or Tourette's. As I said, these drugs increase the dopamine, which worsens the tics, okay, and Tourette's disorder. These are the future treatment, like procognitive agents are being tried. They are H3 antagonists, alpha 7 nicotinic receptors, aiming the alpha 7 nicotinic receptors, and 5-HT3 antagonist plus alpha 7 partial agonist, vatoxetin and alpha 4 B2 beta 2 nicotinic receptor agonist, AMP against 5-HT6 antagonists, and PDA4 inhibitors. Thank you. Roll number 47. Am I audible? Roll number 47. Pawan,
Yes, sir.
who is roll number 47?
Uh,
ఎవరు రాలేదా ఈరోజు 47?
లేదు సార్, రాలేదు సార్.
Okay, roll number 50. Roll number 7. Meghana. Roll number 45. Srinath. Okay, I'll keep option for these people then. Roll number 135. Kartika. Roll number 141. Suryakumar. ఎవరు లేరా పవన్?
కొంతమంది ఉన్నారు సార్.
Roll number 97. Roll number 64.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me the pharmacotherapy of ADHD.
Amphetamine.
Tell me few drugs which we use generally to treat ADHD.
Amphetamine.
Okay. What is the first
Methyl-
choice of drug? Very good.
Methylphenidate.
Okay. What is the dosage of methylphenidate?
Five mg.
5?
5 to 10 mg.
Okay. What is the dosage of amphetamines? Before going to dosage, how what is the mechanism of action of methylphenidate?
It inhibits dopamine and norepinephrine. Reuptake of dopamine and norepinephrine.
Okay. What is the main pathology in ADHD? Why the child is having inattention and hyperactivity? What is the neurochemical factors responsible for ADHD?
Neurotransmitters.
Yeah. What are the neurotransmitters responsible for ADHD and how they are responsible?
Increase dopamine release.
Okay. And
Norepinephrine.
yeah, these two neurotransmitters are responsible for ADHD. I am asking how they are responsible for ADHD. due to increased release.
They stimulate alpha 1 and beta 1 receptors.
Okay.
They also impair working memory.
Okay. I'm asking either overproduction of these transmitters or low production of these neurotransmitters are
Overproduction.
which one? Overproduction of these neurotransmitters lead to ADHD.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. And roll number 20, Harshit. (146), Rajesh. (126), Akhila.
Yes,
139.
sir.
Yeah. Who is this?
126.
126. Is good name?
Akhila, sir.
Okay. Tell me the same question. How neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and dopamine are playing a role in ADHD? Either due to increased release or are deficient. Which one is leading to?
Increased release, sir.
Okay, sure. Are you sure?
Yes, sir. I mean deficient signaling or increased signaling?
Yeah, yes. So these last two lines, okay, either too high or too low stimulation of dopamine and norepinephrine cause inefficient information processing. So these neurotransmitters should be released in a balanced way. Okay, this is the main neurochemical underlying factor for the onset of ADHD. So we have to correct these neurotransmitters. In order to that, we use methylphenidate or atomoxetine or other non-stimulants like guanfacine or clonidine. These drugs balance these both neurotransmitters in a slow and phasic way so that we can correct the child's inattention and hyperactivity. Okay.
Yes, sir.